with God. Forever learning, never able to come to the truth. Those are great big signs of wonder, signs of warnings. Now, I kind of looked up about the ark. How big was that thing? They say it's the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. About the same size. I'm thinking the square footage. It's 101 to 102,000 square feet, the ark. I figured the power. You never ever build a boat without a rudder. The most stupidest thing in the world is to build a boat with no rudder. Sailboats, canoes, whatever. You have, even your paddles have rudder. I'm on occasion. You use your paddle and you make it a rudder. You paddle and you pull it aside, and it's a type of rudder. Every boat has a rudder for directions. This boat had no rudder. This boat had no sails. This boat had no engines. But it had a lot of power. It had God. So the square footage was right. They had no engine room. The engine room was an animal room. 3 stories. And the ceilings were 15 feet high. It is said that 35,000 land animals would take 146 railroad cars to pack all the animals in. It is said the insects and the fowls take at least, which is about 1,700,000 of them, takes about 21 boxcars. In total, it takes about 176 boxcars to take care of the animals. The ark is considered, with the square footage that I put out, of railroad cars of 522 railroad cars. Wow. Give you enough to put all the animals, and it had a lot left over to put in a whole lot of people. But the people didn't believe God. And Noah didn't have to go chase the animals. The animals, just like the fish, when God told Peter to put the net on the other side of the boat when you go back and fish, but Peter said, "No, Lord, please, I fished all night and I'm tired." But Peter had enough sense to say, "But nevertheless, at that word, I will go." Amen. And when Peter went up there and cast the net on the other side of the boat, he was full of fish. He called his friends, "Come help." Well, how did those fish get in the net? Because God told him, and they listened to God. The fish listens to God. Well, the people don't listen to God. And at one time it was so strange that Jesus was sleeping, fast asleep, and there's a big weather that came up. And water was coming in the boat, and the disciples was afraid it was going to sink. And they woke up. Jesus says, "We'll sink it." He said, "You little faith." He stood up and said, "Wind, be still." And the wind kept still, stopped blowing. And they said, "What kind of man is this, that even the elements of the wind listens to him?" Well, let me say this. If the fish and the elements and the animals listen to God, how come we don't listen to God when He talks?
Amen.
I was preaching one time on Canal Street, and they got these little, mules pulling these wagons. And the guy that make a living, they make fun of the old mule, they put the old ugly hat, and put flowers and make it look very silly. And I'm preaching on the corner, and the red light was there, and the mule stopped because of the red light, and those people were listening. And the mule kind of looked at me. And I seen they had Pat O'Brien, big old glass of liquor, getting himself all looped up. And I happened to be preaching about Noah. And I was saying, you see, in those days, those mules had enough sense to get in the ark where the people didn't, or you listening. Boy, that's how they influence people and get a whole lot of friends. Let me tell me, you know how to do that. And so there's enough room in that order to put a whole lot of people, but they wouldn't come when Noah, the righteous preacher, was tested at 480 years walking with God, and another 120 years, and he began to preach and build an ark. How can you imagine putting the little splendor boards, no saw, no nails, putting those boards together and stacking them up? I don't know if you know anything about tar. I remember when I built a boat, and I remember when I had to put coal tar epoxy on the bottom of a boat. And that stuff that gets on your face, it makes you all blistered. You don't get it on your face. You put a lot of Vaseline all over your face, all over your hand, but still it gets on. I'm going to need that boat. And on my back, painting that boat I'm building. And that was a job. So I can imagine Noah heating up that tar, that hot old slimy tar, and you take a piece of wood and you slap it on every crack of that ship, 450 feet long and 75 feet wide. When I painted that boat, it was only 60 feet long and 20 feet wide. And when I got through painting that boat, there was a young man out there who hated me, came with a chain to beat the tar out of me. But I had enough energy, we took care of that business. The man took his mama. But I can imagine the stench, the smell, the work, and yet he preached and stayed steady with God. That's what we need to do. Some of us think now that we have enough time with God, that we've done enough compared to somebody else. It's time for vacation. It's time for relaxation. It's time to get out of the business of serving God. Because I'm comparing myself with the neighbor or myself with a friend. A fool compare himself with someone else. If you want to compare yourself with someone, compare yourself with Jesus, and you see how far short you are. I can go and get a pity party in myself and begin to feel sorry for myself with all what's going on in my life and say, I deserve this, I deserve that, because I deserve all these good things. I don't deserve nothing. Amen. Please, God, don't let arrogance get on my tongue. Don't let my neck stretch out like I'm somebody. Please, God, put me back quickly in my place. Yes. Yes. All I am is a man that's been saved by the grace of God. Noah kept the righteousness. He kept the fire going in the Torah. And he kept the fire going in the sermons. Because the proof is in verse 1 of chapter 7. God wanted to see if he was going to break. Because if I'm going to kill every